everyone to the Her Success podcast, the stories of female franchise leaders by the International Franchise Association's Women's Franchise Committee. I am Cassidy Ford, and today I am here with Debra Vilchis, who is the president of Fishman Public Relations and partner of Franchise Elevator PR. And not only this, but Debra is the 2024 Crystal Compass Award winner. And I have to read this every time because I want to make sure I get it specific. I want to get it exactly right. The Crystal Compass Award is given to a single individual every year by the IFA's Women's Franchise Committee who has made a significant contributions through leadership within their franchise organization, the franchise community, or the community in which they live. So we're very grateful to have you on the podcast, Debra, and thank you so much for everything that you've done for franchising.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, so I know you are very well known in the industry, and I know that anyone who knows you and is starting this podcast is sure to be anticipating a treat today, because between the two of us, we're going to have a lot of fun, I think.
I hope so. I hope it's a good treat.
So my first question, I just want to dive in really into the thick of things, is how you got started in franchising and kind of what that journey has looked like for you to this point.
Well, it's been a really fun journey filled with lots of amazing relationships and people and adventures. I like to think of it as like more of an adventure than a journey, because when you work in a PR agency, you're every day, it's, different clients, different scenarios. You never know what it's going to bring you. But as far as how I got into it, I actually started off in journalism, and I was obsessed with corruption in government. And my parents had taken me to see the movie All the President's Men. It's about, the Nixon scandal, the Watergate scandal. And I think I was like 9 or 10 years old or something like that. And I had decided at that moment, like, this is what I want to do. I want to be an investigative reporter, and I just want to, blow the cover off of all the bad people in government. And that's what I decided to do. So I went into journalism. I got a journalism degree. I even got right away, like, I got a job at my high school paper as the editor. So that was my career path. And then at some point along the way, one of my friends told me, because journalists don't make a lot of money, that there was a PR agency in the suburbs that was looking for freelance writers just to like make some extra money. I decided to take a shot at it. Okay, Cassidy, I know we're going to talk about age later. This is going to age me. I faxed my resume over to Fishman PR. Yep, faxed. You heard like the noise and everything.
Yeah.
Faxed my resume over, and Sherry Fishman contacted me back and said, "Well, clearly you're qualified to be a freelance writer, but we actually have an opening." And they were very small. This was in 1999. We actually have an opening for somebody to work on our clients. And I was like, PR? I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could do this, but I went in, and because I had, in my years as a journalist, I have interviewed a lot of business owners for stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really fascinated by entrepreneurs. Probably because I thought I could never be one. Like yourself, like I could go work for one, but I'm not going to be the one to take the risk and figure out taxes and P&Ls and all that stuff. I'm the idea person, the creative person, the process person. So I was really fascinated by entrepreneurs, and I loved telling their stories as a journalist. So when I went and interviewed with Fishman PR, I thought, oh my God, this is a company that they're entrepreneurs. Sherry and Brad were entrepreneurs. All of their clients in franchising were entrepreneurs, and their whole mission is to help promote entrepreneurism through franchising. And I got to do that in the job by telling stories and pitching stories. I was like, I'm in. So that was in 1999. And that's when I started working for them. And that's how I got my foot in the door.
That's amazing. If it makes you feel any better, I, albeit at the beginning of my career, have also faxed a resume into into an employer.
Okay, a little
So
better.
a
A
little bit
little
better.
better.
Oh my gosh. So you mentioned that, when you and I were first talking about this podcast, I had asked you a question about what was something that was important to you in, where you are in this place in your career, or something that you have dealt with or experienced throughout the course of your career. And what was it that you told me?
I told you age.
Yes.
Age. It's so funny because as I say that word, I'm like, everybody's an age, right? That's something universal. Like, when companies and industries start talking about DE&I and um, diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're usually talking about ethnicity and race and gender and sexual orientation. And not all of us fall into those categories, but all of us are an age. Everybody's a certain age. You're an age, I'm an age, everybody's an age. And there has been stereotypes and discrimination and judgments made upon myself, and I think anyone, based on what age they are at any given point. So when I first got into franchising, I was younger. This was 25 years ago, right? So I think I was in my, early 30s or something. And I had always looked 5 to 10 years younger than I was. Okay, now it's caught up with me. I don't anymore. But when I was younger, because of maybe my size, I'm petite. I had always looked younger. So when I was in my 20s, I looked in my teens. In my 30s, I looked in my 20s. Um, and I came into franchising and I felt as if, and even in my first jobs in journalism, to tell you the truth, nobody really took you seriously.
Mhm.
Who is this young girl? Um, and in my 20s, I fought that and always felt like I had to prove myself. And then in my 30s, it was okay, now she's at the childbearing age, right?
Mm.
Um, is she going to prioritize work and career? And, so then there's that age. And then in your 40s, I'm going to put it right out there. Oh, menopausal,
Mhm.
losing it a little bit, moody. That's why she's acting that way. All of these things, and it just feels like there needs to be a metric just at any company when they're measuring their DE&I for various other factors like the race and the ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation, that age needs to be included in there as a metric because it's a real thing.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you that it's not just the older people that feel this. People who are younger right now are getting a real bad rap. I think, especially right now. Gen Zs, oh, they don't get it. Everything's wrong with Gen Z. And I see the opposite. I think that these younger people who are in the workforce right now, at least the ones at our company,
Mhm.
they're incredibly sharp and savvy, and they do care about their jobs more than anything. And they want to do a job that has a purpose, and sure, they have some traits, they want more feedback than usual, but they are fast moving. They have digital savvy like nobody's business. Maybe they lack a little of the emotional intelligence because they haven't experienced life yet, but that's where we can work together and help each other grow. And so that's kind of where I sit right now as far as what I'm really passionate about is ageism.
I think this is a perfect moment to have this conversation. One, I love that you and I are having this because I have a baby face. I'm older than a lot of people think that I am. And I'm in that bucket. I'm in that 30s bucket, right? Where childbearing age, these are the questions I'm getting. What are you going to do? How are you going to prioritize this or that? So not just me, but our audience in general, we span all generations, right? So if we can kind of take a step back and if you can talk to each of these buckets, the 20s, 30s, 40s, right? So if you can talk to the Gen Z at the moment and say, oh, the challenge that you went through and kind of what you did in that phase of your life to overcome that challenge, as as it relates to what you were doing in franchising. Well, you weren't in franchising in your 20s, were you?
No, early 30s, but it was in journalism, and I do, I was in the work world. And so I like, maybe if I tell you a little bit of a story,
Story.
which helps, maybe will help the Gen Zs and the younger set in their 20s, especially maybe the women. Um, I I couldn't believe it. I got a performance review once, and oh, it was all this stuff. What a great writer and so creative. A great interviewer, right? Like all the things that a journalist should be. Meets deadlines, all of this. But then there was this whole section about how I need to kind of tone it down. And the way that I dressed in the workplace and to some of the events, because at the time I was a writer for the medical industry. And so the doctors would say something about now I wasn't wearing, it wasn't like I was walking in, mini skirts and stiletto heels or anything like that. I was dressed fashionably and trendy for what was in style then.
Right.
And I thought, and the tone it down part was me being silly because that's how I approach work. I have fun. I'm very serious about my work, but I don't take myself too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those moments of tension you can break down with laughter and being goofy and fun. And I thought, really, like, of all the things that I do, and that's in there, like that's what they're focusing on that I need to improve on. It just blew me away. So from that day on, I kind of thought to myself, you know what? I cannot pretend to be buttoned up, and I'm not going to dress a certain way and act a certain way because that's what the organization I'm in thinks I should do. I am going to go work somewhere where I can just be me. And the story that I'm going to tell you, the one that I just said wasn't the story. The story I'm
Okay.
going to tell you actually happened in franchising. There was a woman that I met, and it was at an IFA convention. She was on the women's franchise committee. And the only reason I'm not going to say her name is because she didn't give me permission to, like, I didn't ask her if I could tell the story. And it's kind of embarrassing / funny. But we were at a reception, and I was wearing a dress, and she and I were talking, and I felt like you always feel like you have to hold your stomach in, you know?
No, never,
Um,
never.
oh my gosh, you know what I'm talking about. But I was tired of having to hold my stomach in, and I just had discovered shapewear at this point.
Nice.
So I was wearing the shapewear, and we were talking a little bit, and I said, I don't know. She asked me if I was okay because I was fidgeting. And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to tell her. I'm like, you know what? I'm super uncomfortable. I'm wearing this shapewear and it keeps riding and it's cutting into me. And she goes, oh my God, so am I. And she goes, I'm having the same problem right now. And so I'm like, we should just take this off. She goes, yeah, why are we wearing it? Think about it. We're
Mhm.
wearing it because we want to, we feel like we need to look super thin and and it's like, this is ridiculous. So she and I charged into the bathroom and we took off our shapewear. And the funny part is my purse was too small to fit mine. So she took mine and hers and put them in her larger purse. And then we had this whole conversation about letting yourselves be. And she mailed it back to me via FedEx. She put it in FedEx a few weeks later, and it had a note in it that just said, thanks for the great time at the, IFA this year. She goes, from now on, we just got to let it all hang out.
I
I was
love
like,
that.
I don't know. So I think that's maybe my advice is just sort of, you don't have to hold your stomach in. You don't have to wear the shapewear. You don't have to be someone you're not. I know people say it all the time, just be authentic and be you. And as long as you work hard and take your work seriously and abide by the company core values and all of that stuff, you can be you and you're gonna do fine. Because guess what? It's really hard to keep up that pretense. It's
Yes.
like, you start dating someone and you pretend you like football or something. After a month or so or two, you're like, oh my God, I have to tell him I don't like football. It's sort of like when you work at a company and you pretend that you're all buttoned up and you're going to dress and act a certain way. That's really exhausting
Mm-hmm.
to keep that up. So just be yourself. It's a heck of a lot easier.
It is. I think that kind of moves me into that 30s phase, right? So that authenticity that you're talking about or putting on a pretense, did you feel that pressure when you were in that phase of your life and working through your career and being told, this should be your priority or what, being judged for, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because at the time, what was in style was being
Mm.
a working mom who could like you weren't supposed to be a stay-at-home mom and prioritize that. You were supposed to be a two-income household and hold up your end, but also play that role in society where you are supposed to have kids. So for me, I was pretending a lot that I wanted that power woman thing to do it, but I really didn't. I really did. I did enjoy my job and I wanted to work, but there was a part of me that I never told anybody until this day that kind of just wanted to try that, give it all to my kids thing and stay home and make the peanut butter sandwiches and mac and cheese and what, take them to the park all day. I thought that would be really fun, but I felt like I couldn't admit that to anyone
Mm-hmm.
because that made me seem like less respectful in the working world. Like I would lose respect from the men in the working world for that.
Mm.
So I always sort of kept that inside me. Now I don't have any regrets because I did wind up really loving the mom part of my life as much as I did the work part of my life, and it all worked itself out. But it's funny, the pressure that I felt was to not tell anybody that secretly I kind of wanted to be that stay-at-home mom.
Right. And I think that we talk a lot about on this podcast and the many amazing female leaders that have been on this show about that balance between work and life. And you talk about this and it looks different for everybody, right? And it looks different at different points in our careers. And this is the first time I've really kind of thought through of like keeping it a secret of wanting to be a stay-at-home mom and what that judgment could feel like.
Yeah, you always feel like you have to keep some kind of secret. I mean, some people are a stay-at-home mom and they keep it a secret that they feel like necessary. They have to keep it a secret that they don't want to, and they
Mm-hmm.
they don't like that, and they'd much rather be working all day, and they feel like that's bad too. You almost feel like there's never a win situation in there in the eyes of other people. And that's why you can't really care so much about the perception. You've got to just do what you feel is right for you at any time in your life and stop trying to meet up to those expectations of others because you're never going to win that game.
You know what? That also segues into I read a post by someone on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago talking about menopause and the expectations of a woman in the workplace, especially a woman in a leadership position, of everything that your body and your mind are going through at the same time that you are expected to do X, Y, and Z and live up to the world's, view of what a leader should look like. So that let's move into that because now we're getting to the point and it's a whole other ball game, right?
Well, I think that for me, that stage of my life wasn't as much about the physical changes that were happening to my body or my mind. I think it was more, again, about this perception that others might have of me at that age, that maybe I'm losing relevance. Maybe it's time for her to start moving over and letting the younger set, get their turn. And what happened to me at that point in my life was, okay, when I was in my 20s, because I felt like I wasn't taken seriously because of how young I was and how I looked, I was out there to prove myself, right? So when I came to my first few franchising events and franchise conventions, even my first two like client meetings, I went in all full of like piss and vinegar. Yeah, I'm going to show them how smart I am. I kept throwing out factoids and this and that. And I tried to take over the meetings. And it's funny, the turnaround that clicked in me when I got into my mid 40s, I thought, I need to be that. I'm hungry to learn again. Like I spent so much time trying to be this know-it-all person, and I missed so many opportunities to listen and learn from people older than me, younger than me, same age as me. And I really started to view these events that I went to, whether it's in franchising or PR, as just these exciting opportunities to, oh my gosh, just sit down, shut up, listen, and maybe actually learn something new. And as I've shifted that, I have this exciting, like renewed spirit almost. And that's what I'm talking about, the Gen Zs in our workplace. I'm going to them and I'm asking them, tell me how you show me your day. How do you navigate through social media? Where are you getting your news? Where are you getting your information? What are you watching? When I need help with managing technology or anything like that, I know I can go to them in an instant. And I say, how do you do that so fast? Like, I'm fascinated. Right now, we're going through a change in our company with the platform that we're using to house all of our documents. It's a complete shift from what we used to do. And I know that I can rely on them. They are helping me through it, just like I can help them through navigating a meeting with a client and reading a room, because that's something they need help with that they're not used to. Handling tough questions from clients and things like that. That's where I can help them. And at the same time, I'm trying to help learn how they're seeing the world through their lens, which is helping me not only learn how to manage and help them grow, but also helping me with my client work, because that's the generation they're trying to reach as customers too.
Right.
So I'm getting all this great insight and information, and I'm more excited and rejuvenated, I guess, than I've ever been when I was a know-it-all.
Love that. So then within that context, define leadership for me.
Define leadership in the context
of learning versus knowing it all, of asking questions. Because here's the question that I was going to ask, right? Does the need for mentorship go away as you advance in your career? But mentorship in the sense that like you're listening and asking questions of a younger generation, right? Just as much as they're asking questions of you. So what does leadership look like in that context of intergenerational, you know, of interacting between different generations.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that. Instead of always looking to say things like, oh, they don't get it because they're young and they haven't lived life yet. A good leader will say, I wonder what they get that I don't. And I wonder how I can maybe help them with things that they don't get yet, but they can help me with things that I don't get because I'm not them and they're growing up in a completely different time frame than myself. And I think that's really what's missing right now is that respect for what they can offer to you. And, you know, this this hunger and curiosity to always learn. I remember when I first got the role as president, and this shift occurred in 2021. I had been the COO for a long time at Fishman, sort of running the operations of the company. And then we had decided that we were going to make some changes and just shift things all the way on up. And I was given the role as president. And I thought, this isn't just a title to me. Like, this is when you're president, you got to act presidential. You got to really, well, the first thing that I did when that change happened is I thought, okay, I've got to talk to women outside of my organization who have been in the situation where they're taking over a president role, where the founders used to have the role, where there's going to be shifts. There's a lot of things I'm going to have to navigate. How do I get over imposter? How do I gain the respect? All of these things. The first thing I did was I shot a text out to Barb Moran and Susan Beth, because they live in the Chicago area. And I'm not like best friends with them. Just kind of saw them around the industry over the years, knew them, respected both of them. And I was kind of nervous. I said to my husband that night, I said, I'm thinking about texting these two women in franchising who I feel like I can go to and maybe just ask them to go to lunch. And maybe they can give me some advice because I'm nerved up about this whole thing. And I feel like there's nobody I can really talk to about it. And he was like, oh, come on. You're afraid to shoot a text over to, he's like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't want them to look at it and be like, I don't know. I didn't want to be rejected or something. It was like asking somebody for a date. I don't know what it was. Um, and so of course, you sit there and then you're like, okay, they haven't written back yet. What are they thinking? They're thinking that was the weirdest question ever. Mm-hmm. Well, within 20 minutes, they both were like, that sounds great. We would love it. When, where? And guess what? It turned into a regular recurring lunch date that we would have, and just asking them questions. And some of the advice that I have gotten from those two women, I apply, and it has made all the difference in the world to me. One of the rules Susan told me once that her dad told her, when you're making decisions, because I was always trying to please everybody. I was like, if I go this way, this person's going to be upset. If I go that way, and she said, my dad told me when I took over a leadership role, Susan, you got to do the bestest for the mostest. And I thought, wow, what a great rule. Basically, if you're just trying to make one person happy and everybody else isn't going to be, or, vice versa, you have to do the bestest. So I use that rule. That's just one example. And Barb gave me some great tips as well. And we just lean on each other. And I think going back to your question about what is leadership at this stage, to me, it's remaining curious, be excited and ready for change, because today's world right now, AI is entering into our roles at the agency, and just AI is changing our workforce. And it was sort of like, all right, I either get really scared of this thing and I ignore it and pretend it's not happening, or I start asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of learning and try it out myself and figuring out and asking other PR agencies how they're utilizing it and talking to other people in franchising about how we could utilize it to help them. And so that's what I think the leadership piece comes into play so much, going back to your question, is the one thing that I have learned in terms of leadership is just the constant curiosity and openness to learning new things and changing. It's really a bad place to be at, to be in neutral, I guess. Because when you're in neutral, you're actually in reverse and you're going to go backwards because you're not going to be making the changes you need to go forward. And I think just always looking to get out of neutral gear, move forward. And you only do that by having respect for all of the people around you, asking your questions, going into these conferences instead of ready to show everybody how smart you are. You don't have to prove anything. Go in there being an incredible student, and every person you meet, no matter what age or stage in life they are, you can learn something from them.
So you were saying earlier a lot about perception, right? And there was this quote, one of those memes on Facebook that I saw like 2 years ago, but it stuck with me of you are not responsible for the narrative other people create of you in their own heads. And age is maybe a number, other people's perceptions. We don't have control over that, right? But as a leader, what you have control over your love of learning, of how you treat people, of, it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. There is an author, speaker, wonderful human. His name is Chip Conley, and he writes and talks a lot about the age gap in the workplace. And one of the things that he says that just really sticks with me is, when you walk into a room, you want someone to notice your energy and not your wrinkles. And I also think that goes to when you walk into a room, you want someone to just notice your energy and not your lack of wrinkles either. You're younger. But yeah, I mean, I think as long as you have that energy and the curiosity and this hunger to learn, other people will see that and respect that. And that's is what is going to keep you a good leader. You can be 100 years old, 150 years old, God bless.
Methuselah.
Yeah. And as long as you walk in the room and you're hungry to learn, eyes and ears wide open from people of all ages, they're going to notice that energy.
I would ask you, just in wrapping up, one last final thought that you would leave a piece of advice to other women leaders, women in franchising who are seeking to be leaders of their own companies someday. What would you say to them?
Oh gosh. I know that you wanted it short, but I think I told you that I like to tell stories.
No, go for it.
I'll shorten this one as much as I can because it does really go back to it. And I told this when I was getting the Crystal Compass Award at the convention.
I think I know what story you're going to tell.
I won't tell all the details. I swear I'll go with the Cliff Notes version, but it goes back to the piece of advice that I would give. And that is the day that I was starting at Fishman, I was a ball of nerves. a wreck. I had a cold sore. I had a sinus infection. My stomach was not well. There was a blizzard outside. I thought, oh my God, everything is working against me here. Like maybe the gods are telling me that I shouldn't be taking this new job. But I remembered a quote my parents had always told me, that nothing good comes easy. So I just kept saying nothing good comes easy. So really what gods are telling me is that what's good is coming. And, this struggle that I'm having today is going to be worth it. And then when I got there, the story, I had to run into the bathroom pretty quickly, feeling the nerves and everything. And it was a unisex bathroom in a small office. And I didn't lock the door. And Brad Fishman did not know that I was in there. And he opened the door, and there I was, pants at the leg, down at the bottom of my ankles. And I was mortified and horrified, and all the things that you can imagine were going through my head. And he went, oh, and he closed the door. And I thought, that's it. I can't come back from this. There's no way. How can I? Well, here it is. 25 years later, I'm the president of the company, because that day I decided, okay, I could run out this door and just, that's it. That's it for me. I'm done, because I'm so embarrassed and mortified. Or I could just pull up my pants and get on with it. And I said, I'm going to pull my pants up and get on with it. And I think that's the advice that I would give to women. When you do something embarrassing, or you say something in a meeting that you felt wasn't the right answer, or you're having a bad day, or you think you made a bad decision, because we always ruminate back and forth, it's going to be fine. Good things will come on the other side of it. And so just pull up your pants and get on with it. So that's the advice. That's my one piece of advice, Cassidy.
And may or may not have been wishing that would be the story that you would tell. So thank you for obliging.
Glad I could come through for you.
You did. So, hey, happy 25th anniversary at Fishman.
And
congrats on the Crystal Compass Award. That is something that was so well deserved. And we all are very grateful to have you in the industry and have learned from you, just whether we know you or have been watching from the sidelines. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. And we need to do this again sometime.
We should definitely hang out. I'll tell you lots more stories.
Please do. And thank you to everyone who joined the podcast today, listening in or watching. If you are not yet involved with your local women's franchise network, we have chapters all over the country. It's a great way to meet other women like Debra, meet people like me, want to have fun, but also network and learn a lot about franchising. So check out the Women's Franchise Committee web site on the IFA's website, and join your local WFN, meet people like Debra, learn from them. And once again, thanks, Debra, for joining the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.